Perhaps one of my favorite things about the series Grey's Anatomy is Meredith's narration. Here is one of my favorite ones. First, do no harm. As doctors, we pledge to live by this oath. But harm happens and then guilt happens. And there's no oath for how to deal with that. Guilt never goes anywhere on its own. It brings its friends doubt and insecurity. First, do no harm. Easier said than done. We can take all the oaths in the world, but the fact is, most of us do harm all the time. Sometimes, even when we are trying to help, we do more harm than good. And then guilt rears its ugly head. What you do with that guilt is up to you. We are left with that choice. They're doctors, of course, but she is talking about the guilt she feels in their personal life in this particular episode. And most of us non-doctors, even if we didn't take any oath, we still set out to not hurt anybody, not to cause any harm. But then we fail. We fail 1,000 times a day. Today on Must Know Before We Die, we are going to explore the emotion we call guilt and why most of the time it's only leading us to worse behavior and not better. Guilt is there, like all other emotions, for a purpose. Its purpose is to keep us a good person, to keep our moral compass in check. It should be like a little bell to help us notice our wrongdoings and correct path. Unlike its sisters, shame and regret, it has a better reputation. Well, regret is more like a stepsister. She is there when we wish something had turned out differently, when another wiser decision could have been made. For example, I might regret not being there when my grandmother died. I can regret the decision of driving drunk, which led me to an accident. Regret comes later when we see the outcome. Guilt is more immediate. I feel guilty when I see that my actions have caused another person to feel bad. For example, I might feel guilty that I hit somebody and this poor soul can never walk again. Guilt and regret can sometimes exist together, but they are different. Shame is the other sister and is the heaviest. Shame is a very strong belief when we do a mistake that we are bad. I am stupid, I am undeserving, and self-hatred. It is just being immersed in this self-despise. It also closes all the possibility for change. It makes us want to hide. It is full of judgment, so we wouldn't even want to talk about it. But guilt is not about us. It is about our actions. Perhaps that's why it's usually talked about as a useful emotion. And I do think it is useful as a reminder at the initial stage. But then most of us have this very strong sense of punishment that should come after guilt. Yes, if you do something illegal, even if you feel guilty, there should be a fair punishment by law. But a lot of things that we feel guilty about are not illegal, like eating more than we should, or not saving enough money, or not being on time. And punishment, self-punishment, is only making us make more mistakes. To understand where this feeling comes from, we have to go back all the way to our childhoods. For the majority of human history, we have followed a reward-punishment system of raising kids. Most people nowadays know that hitting your kids is bad parenting. It is abuse and keeps them in a constant state of fear. So now we've turned to timeouts, consequences, and threats and bribes.
You're grounded for a week.
We say to our kids. When I was a little kid, I used to think, is this what growing up in America is like? And if I like being in my room, and if I spend a lot of time there, is it still a punishment? Anyway, timeouts are also not effective parenting practices. Research has proven again and again, and I'll link it in the description or show notes, that emotional punishment also doesn't work. Spanking and hitting are physical punishments, and timeouts and consequences are emotional punishments, whether they are intended to be or not. It is withdrawing love and affection and attention and distancing ourselves as a way of changing a behavior. Kids are not puppets that should act as we want. Our role as parents is to make them feel safe in all the ways possible, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. Children should never think that it is an option that they would be abandoned if they don't behave correctly. One of the only fears that we are born with is abandonment. They should never feel like they are allowed in our presence only if they act a certain way. Unconditional love should never be taken away. When children act badly, they are trying to communicate hurt or unmet need or lacking skill in dealing with the situation. It is the role of parents to teach them decision-making and sense of responsibility and self-trust to make the right decision. Punishment is robbing them of this opportunity by teaching them they are not capable of making a right decision by themselves, and therefore an external reason, a reward or punishment is needed to control them. Sadly, this is how a lot of us have been raised. I am not saying this to fault any parents or to make anyone feel bad. It is a useful tool to think about our childhoods and to reparent our thinking systems going forward. Mistakes are inevitable. Even as adults, it is up to us to show unconditional love to ourselves. So tell me, if you are trying to lose weight and you have an ice cream when you're out, do you think, okay, that was not good, but it's not that bad, I'll just eat healthy for the rest of the day? Or do you keep on eating fast food and sugar for the rest of the day because, what's the point really if I've screwed up? Because that is self-punishment. If you planned to accomplish some things for the day and you oversleep and spend the rest of the morning watching random shows, do you think, what needs was I trying to have met by procrastinating? Perhaps comforts, or do I need some rest, physical and emotional, mental rest? Or do you go straight up to hating yourself a little bit? Do you like yourself a little bit less when you are less perfect? Because that is self-punishment. If we continue punishing ourselves for every mistake, every inconvenience, every failure to be perfect, we are living in constant guilt. Guilt might not be as strong of an emotion as shame, but it is like a paper cut for every little fault. It hurts a little bit. And just like that saying, death by 1,000 paper cuts, if you have a lot of tiny paper cuts, it can be really painful, pretty much leading us to lower self-esteem and more mistakes. The antidote to excessive guilt is self-compassion. What are you telling yourself if you are in a constant state of punishing yourself? We are all human, and we can only make mistakes, technically. And our only option to not repeat them is to learn from them. Self-compassion looks like, yes, I've been eating really bad lately and I might not have worked out for a month, but I still love myself and I'm still gonna take care of myself. Yes, I've made a mistake here and hurt somebody, and I'll find out what my thinking was like at that moment and how I came to make a decision, and I'll make amends. But I'll still go to that massage later today, just like I planned, you know? When we learn to examine that bell of guilt, when we ask ourselves what we were thinking at this moment, what was I feeling, and self-correct, we'll do better in the future. Like Meredith Grey said, guilt happens all the time, but we have a choice what we choose to do with it. I'll end this episode with a quote from Maya Angelou. She said, "Do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better."
If a human being dreams a great dream, dares to love somebody, if a human being dares to be Martin King or Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa or Malcolm X, if a human being dares to be bigger than the condition into which she or he was born, it means so can you. And so you can try to stretch yourself. So you can internalize homo sum humani nihila me alienum puto. I am a human being. Nothing human can be alien to me. That's one thing I'm learning.